Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's PTC Talks, where we are excited by having Steve Shaw at PTC and Rafael Witkowski from Transition Technologies PLC for a session on Win Net Zero Race with PLM. But first, a very quick introduction by me. And my name is still Toby Pilson, and I'm the Alliance Manager for PTC, leading these weekly webinars at PTC, where we invite customers and partners for some inspiration on digital transformation to see what is possible and how to make things happen. And we are running all these talks on Friday, same time, with topics around either manufacturing, services, or engineering. And all the recordings of past sessions are to be found on the registration site. The agenda for today is first a quick overview of PTC by me, and then Rafael and Steve will run the presentations where they will touch base on a few challenges, how to address these, and then explain some of the business outcomes. And at the end, we're also having a Q&A session, so please keep your questions to the end, or you may also put them in the chat during this meeting, and we will pick them up later. Next slide, please, Ravel. So just a brief overview of PTC on who we are. PTC is a global software company with a headquarters in Boston, and we provide market-leading solutions on IoT, augmented reality, PLM, CAD, SLM, and ALM through the digital thread to help companies to accelerate their digital transformation. Now over to you, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Torben. If you could go to the next slide, Rafael. And thanks everyone for joining this morning or this afternoon for many of you. It's nice to be here and a pleasure to be co-presenting here with my friend Rafael from TT. So we want to talk a little bit about the drive to net zero. And I think to set things off, what we really want to set the stage with the fact that, really sustainability, although it may be looked at as a challenge for companies out there, there's actually some real value drivers in why a company should be looking at sustainability and sustainability outcomes as it relates to their industry and their products. If you think about it, really from a top line perspective, if you're producing or developing more sustainable products, I mean, there's an opportunity within the business to business world because, just like yourselves, the OEMs or other companies within the supply chain or people that you provide products and services for, they have similar initiatives. They need to meet certain targets. It's important for them to have reliable partners in that process. So if you're building and producing more sustainable products, you're helping them achieve their sustainability commitments. Similarly, on the front with, if you're thinking about directly to customer to consumer, right? In this world and in the dynamics we're seeing today, there's more and more demand from customers to be more eco-responsible and the desire to purchase more sustainable products. If you think about the bottom line in the center figure there's also opportunities to drive efficiencies in how you produce products, looking at how to make things with less, making more pointed manufacturing and design decisions for better outcomes. And obviously on the right-hand side, it's about mitigating risk. As we're going to get to later today, we all know that there are regulations in place that are making it more and more important that you yourselves meet those sustainability goals and needs. So it's a critical component to the success of any business. If you could go to the next slide, please. Certainly thinking about that risk aspect of these things, the other thing that's certainly a big driver right now and can't be dismissed around sustainability is around regulations, right? We've had for a long time now pretty strict regulations that around hazardous material, whether it be with REACH and RoHS, those types of regulations driving us to make sure that we're not putting these dangerous materials into our products and having them go out into the environment. That's now changing and evolving and looking really at the broader impact that of the products that we love and use and require and what their impacts are having on the climate itself. There's certainly standards and frameworks that have been developed by some global consortiums, but that is now becoming more and more important with actual regulations, things like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or CSRD, as you see in the middle, where in the European Union, leading the way to no surprise, is demanding that companies meet certain sustainability targets. And it's not just about the financial implications if you don't. There are actually some serious legal repercussions if you don't. And I think as we move along this journey around the globe, you can certainly see that there are many other countries and regions that are likely to be following suit with this type of regulation enforcement, meaning that if you want to do business in these regions and globally, it's absolutely critical that you start to think about sustainability as it relates to your products and your new product introduction. I guess, Rafael, I'd ask you, what are you hearing about how companies are trying to meet these demands, because it certainly looks like it's a bit of a challenge.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure. So to extend on what Steve has said, we are globally on a net zero mission, which means that the industry has to be carbon neutral until 2050. And especially, so we have an initiative called Science-Based Targets, when companies need to commit to define how they will actually reduce their emission. So that's and that's one aspect of that. And here, especially in Europe, we have a set of policies that are defined by European Green Deal. And what I found really interesting recently about it is that we started this race from the products with a heavy energy use, which was focused on the use stage of their life cycle. But after that, European Commission did a number of studies that resulted in facts that at the moment they are paying much more focus on the product design stage. So as a result of this study, European Commission is expecting around 30% of reductions coming really from the design stage, because it turns out that almost 50% of the global greenhouse gases emissions is coming from this early upstream stage of processing and extracting of primary raw materials. And what is even more interesting, we recently have a new regulation that is called the ESPR, Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation. That is not a new one. Recently, we have just an update on that. And this regulation will broaden the scope of products that it touches. And now it's expected to tackle 65% of all products that exist on European market. So this regulation is driven by European Commission, but it affects globally, because every product that is on European Union market will need to comply to this regulation. And popular statement that is on the European Commission page says that it's up to 80% of that environmental impact being determined at the design stage of the product, or at the design stage. So my question to you, Steve, is, are you surprised?
No, I'm actually not. If you could go to the next slide, it's really kind of a funny metric, I think, because I think in we've heard this 80% metric in other categories, right? I think we've heard things like, hey, 80% of the cost of your product is determined within that design phase, right? And this idea that if you're not making smart decisions with your design, you can pay an enormous price around things like late stage changes. We talk about this all the time in the context of PLM. So it's really not that surprising. And you can see that sort of illustrated in the graphic to the right-hand side. But if you stop and think about it, and back to sort of the points that you were making, Rafael, if you just think about things like the materials you choose, right? I mean, the energy that's spent, right, to extract and refine and transport these materials to manufacturing facilities, for instance. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of energy and greenhouse gases that are being emitted, like you stated. And then you start to think about what how do I solve my problem, right? It's, you know, I need to think about, you know, meeting my requirements, meeting cost demands, you know, meeting those sorts of things. And if I start to think about how I'm going to make it, right? What are the manufacturing processes that I can use? Again, a lot of energy consumed in those activities that are going to drive, you know, what the footprint of your product is. And certainly that doesn't dismiss some of the later stage opportunities to drive down your sustainability goal, to achieve those sustainability goals. But what it's really pointing to, and I think is illustrated in some of the words here, is that, you know, things like your design choices, your material selection, even having some visibility and transparency into your supply chain, understanding. We talked earlier about, you know, that opportunity in the B2B space as a supplier,
Yeah.
right? Understanding what those impacts can be are really, really important. And if you want to have that visibility, again, maybe it's a little bit of a plug for a PLM system, but the bottom line is you need to have a strong, robust bill of material that is visible early to everybody within your organization, because that's how you're going to drive, you know, understand those implications and surface those opportunities to drive down, you know, those climate negative, you know, parameters that you're trying to reduce to meet your objectives. So it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, maybe you could tell me a little bit more though. Sounds good, but you know, what are companies doing with this information to kind of gather or garner those insights? Because I can have a great bill of material and that's fantastic, but what do they do with it?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think that we would like to have a little bit of, we would like to step into the environmental expert shoes for a moment. So there is a discipline that is called life cycle assessment that is at the moment used to score the products against environmental impact. And this discipline is divided into 4 stages. The first one is really about setting goals and scope, and it's really related to a product category rule for a particular sector and particular product type. Then there is this phase that is really important from the PLM perspective, which is all about gathering the relevant bill of material data for the inventory. And then impact assessment is really the detailed environmental science when you do a lot of classification, characterization, grouping, and normalization against particular impact categories. So that's something that is a little bit further down from PDM. But now, you know, I want to show something realistic, and I asked one of the LCA experts that we are working with about how the lifecycle inventory exercise looks like. And I was shared an Excel where you can find what really means for the lifecycle assessment expert to work on. And as you can see on the left side, you have the ingredients that some of them or most of them will actually come from PLM. And on this horizontal side, you have also manufacturing processes and some additional aspects that we will probably not be able to address from PLM. But as you can see here, we both have the EBOM property, the EBOM ingredients like materials, but also we have some MBOM ingredients. So that's the real life example. And now giving it back to you, what do you think, Steve, how much we can really help from PLM? And what's the actions that we should follow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, again, it's another example. I think you're sort of illustrating that. I know you're going to get into it later of this notion of an extension of that digital thread we talk about. But I think getting back to that 80%, I mean, it's very clear, at least in these early stages of these, you know, sustainability goals that companies are looking to achieve, that there's a real opportunity to focus in that what, you know, I guess we call scope 3 or upstream category, really looking at, again, not to dismiss later product life cycle opportunities when the product's in use, and looking at recyclability, certainly very important, and also looking at in-use greenhouse impact or carbon impact as well. But I think when you start to look at where you can have that initial improvement or gains, let's say, you really got to look upstream, right? No question about it. And, like I sort of alluded to earlier, it's looking at things like, what am I using for material? Are there things that I can use with, some of the more modern design technology, things like generative AI, we talk about quite a bit, where I can not only optimize my design for performance. Of course, you need to meet those performance requirements and cost as well, but there's an opportunity to look at it from that environmental perspective too, and figuring out the right balance between sort of those three different key drivers. The other thing, like I mentioned again, you really have to have visibility into that supply chain. What are the sustainability values and carbon footprint information that they're providing to you? You might decide, right? Maybe I'm going with a supplier that might be slightly more expensive, but because of their location, because of their processes, maybe they're going to give me a better overall score. It just makes more sense for me to do that. And the other thing I think that's really important to think about is, obviously we talk about reuse, right? If you can reuse something, there's value across the business in doing that. And that's no different really, I think, when it comes to sustainability concerns. You already have built processes that are proven, are efficient, etc. But another aspect that you might want to think about is around modularity, right? Because modularity can that's another form of reuse. But the other thing that it can translate into is improved serviceability, right? I was thinking about this before the call today, right? I mean, one of the ways that everyone can have a better impact on the environment, right, is let's not go out and buy a cell phone every 2 years because the new model comes out, right? I mean, hold on to that thing. It's even greater if there's a big piece of industrial equipment that I'm not having to take away and discard, because it's no good anymore. Make it so I can service that thing, keep it in use. That's better for the environment as well. So all of these things you can start to think about early in the process to have real benefit around meeting those sustainability goals, of course. And that's really where we're focused on in the near term, at least on how we can help customers achieve those goals. If you could maybe go to the next slide, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one thing I would like to add on the modular design, many customers are having thousands of components and millions of configurations of those components. So when you facilitate the modular design, you can actually help a lot with automating the footprint calculation, because then you calculate on the component level and then you can reuse it for on the assembly and product level. Yeah, sorry.
That's a really great point. I didn't really think about the reuse of the calculations as well. You already know, right?
Yeah. Not everything can be reused, but significant part of this can be reused,
that's right.
Especially at the material level.
Sure. So, we talk about how PLM can help with this, right? That single source of truth, understanding that bill of material. To your point, if you have a modular architecture, there's a lot of opportunities for reuse. But the other thing that we want to do is to further help our customers understand. And this, it says roadmap. Admittedly, the next couple of slides are a little bit of selling on things that we're looking to do to help you on this journey. The first one is really around reporting and calculations, right? One of the things that I talked about earlier was, I want to be able to have, the earlier I have a visibility into the decisions that I'm making, the more likely it's going to result in a positive outcome. So having the ability, this is not necessarily supplanting, robust LCA tools, like I'm sure Rafael's going to talk about in a little bit here, but I want to understand what are the impacts that my choices are having. So having some reporting capabilities in the system that will allow me to quickly understand the impact around my decision. And you can see in the illustration here, this idea, it could be any attribute, honestly. We talked about cost as well, but in this case, if I have footprint information coming from my suppliers, or my LC analysts have already done that calculation, I can start to roll that up, and I can understand based on the configurations that I'm looking at and evolving in my development processes, and get an idea of how well I'm doing against my targets or my goals. And the other thing that we can do with this information is we can actually take that and we'll be able to export that. So you can use that as a starting point or a feeder into those other more, purpose-built tools to do maybe deeper LCA analysis and whatnot. So, but it's a way to get some early visibility. So that's something that we're working on.
If I can,
go ahead, Rafael. Absolutely, I'd love you to chime in.
So just wanted to add on what you said, Steve, about this exporting, because this is the part that LCA consultants struggle a lot. There are two aspects. First of all, they want to have the rolled up values to be able to help them with LCA lifecycle inventory, like you saw the example. So they need to have a summary of ingredients in their bill of materials. And the second thing is that they say that they need to go back and fix the data many times. So as long as you have correct BOM in Windchill, or at least fixed it once, then the next time you will save your time when you export and have that data fixed and ready with regards of units. So there needs to be, for example, a consolidated unit in your BOM. So you don't have one material in kilograms and the other one in grams, etc. Those kind of cases will be solved by this functionality.
That's right. Exactly. And then the other thing that we're looking to do in the future, and I know if you can go to the next slide, Rafael, and I know some customers out there that I've interacted with, they've sort of done this on their own, because one of the benefits of our PLM system, at least it's our belief, is that it's very flexible, very open, right? You can do some things to represent data within your business in a form that meets your needs. But one of the things that we think is really important for us to, really kind of set the stage for moving forward is that we really need to provide a standard out-of-the-box model for your engineering material information. When I say engineering material information, right, it's analogous to what I find when I go up as a design engineer, go into a handbook to say, hey, what's the Young's modulus? What's its thermal expansion coefficient? Those sorts of things, because I need to make sure that it's going to perform the right way. I want to use the density information to understand how much it's going to weigh, those types of things. It's not the piece of bar stock or raw materials, if you look in the right-hand corner, that I might purchase and then wrap some processes around to create that idealized engineering material. So it's that upfront, what does the engineer select out of a catalog to assign to the part that he's designing, basically. So we want to introduce an out-of-the-box model, so that what we can allow is that when a CAD designer or someone like that assigns the material within their environment, we will automatically be able to reflect that information directly against the parts, allowing you to understand the broader scope of the material selection decisions that you're making across your entire product. And oh, by the way, you can see another valued partner of ours, Ansys, is mentioned here. If you have a dedicated engineering material management database such as Granta, well, that's fine too, right? We certainly don't think we would ever be supplanting the sophistication and the depth to which they go into understanding material information, but we certainly want to be able to allow that information to flow into the system. But it's really important, if we want to help you with those targets, and we go back to that 80%, I need to have representation and traceability within PLM so I understand the material selections that I'm making, so it can help contribute to that roll up, because I might have some estimations. Granta database will provide you some CO2 footprint estimations that you can use to, again, get that early assessment about what your selections mean to the product. And oh, by the way, I'll also, by having that traceability, if there's a decision within my company that, hey, there's a better material to use because it has, more sustainable characteristics, but meets my performance needs, we want to have that where use traceability so that I can actually formally go through that change process as well and understand the impacts across my design. So these are a couple of things that we're working on. I think we'll probably have some more news as we progress in the next few months on what when we're going to realize this. The other thing to mention, again, tying that into manufacturing is really critical. And I think, Rafael, you're going to talk a little bit about that, because it's not just about the design itself. There's other processes within product development that also need assessment. I know you've been talking to a lot of customers and have some thoughts on that. So why don't you share those with the audience?
Absolutely. One particular point you mentioned, you discussed this in the details, is about having the material footprint. I recently found a very interesting study that says that after wins in transportation and product use, now we really need to focus on selecting sustainable materials. So therefore, we actually we implemented a little bit of that already. And I would like to show you how you can benefit with Windchill and also ANSYS Granta MI to select the relevant material for your component. So we implemented that end-to-end process when from Windchill you are able to select particular material using ANSYS Granta Gateway. So in this one you have they have the material universe that consists of 6,000 plus materials, including alloys, etc., with a detailed footprint of them. So you can select that particular material, and we actually created, as a part of our Echo PLM application, a way to display the footprint for that particular material in a detailed way. So as you can see on this one, this is a Navigate-based application that is our pilot that we created to demonstrate those sustainability and early impact capabilities. And as you can see, I show here the raw material footprint that is coming directly from ANSYS Granta that was originally selected in Windchill. So it follows the material management best practice. It can be selected from Windchill or Creo, by the way, and I can see the footprint and see where I am with regards of my material environmental impact. That's one thing. But the second one is about the process footprint, which is another important aspect of that. And this is something where I get really inspired, because this is the place when you can really take benefit of interselection of those two disciplines. One is, of course, the product information that you have in Creo and in Windchill. The second one, and you have parameters like material and geometry parameters, etc. But the other thing is that you need to be able to calculate the footprint, you need to think in a way of processes. They are officially called human activities. We call them manufacturing processes. And there are some processes that are very straightforward. So to be able to calculate a footprint, you just need to pass the mass used. But some processes are more complicated. And I have the example of turning, where to be able to calculate the footprint, you really need to calculate the removed mass. So the total footprint will be your function of product parameters and manufacturing processes or human activities. And having that said, and taking a look what Steve is planning in his enhancement, having the engineering material and having that mapping from engineering material to the raw material, when you can have the size of the raw material block, you can calculate those footprints very, very precisely. And this is where the more you go in your, and this is the place where you can use npm link to actually define your manufacturing processes and then have those footprints calculated as much as possible. We did those approximation methods on as a part of our Echo PLM offering. Maybe the final slide I would like to, and actually these are the details, but I would like to move to the next slide because we are running out of time. What else you can do? You can also have Navigate-based extension that will help you with your sustainability journey. One of them is a multiple visualizations of data to tell you which material is the most heavy, which material is the heaviest with regards of emissions. You can look at your product types, component types, and see the goals and trends. And the second thing, which is a very important part of sustainability game, is engagement with the suppliers. So you can facilitate solutions like Navigate, when you can build a portal to collaborate with your suppliers. And We have that all as a part of our sustainability Echo PLM offering. I just want to make sure, I just want to have one commercial slide. Sorry for that, but I just want to make sure that we are on the sustainability journey together with PTC since 2 years already. We're doing a lot of that stuff together, having a lot of workshops with the customer. We were on the European trip driven by Dave, and we started that entire thing with our sustainable manufacturing report. So we did a project with the university here in Poland. We have a lot of expertise of integrating Windchill with other applications. And I think that name of the game of sustainability will be integrating between multiple different systems here. It's not going to be only one system. So that's it from my side, because we're out of time.
Rafał, it sounds like sustainability is another important thread in that, or fiber in that digital thread, for sure.
Absolutely. It's another dimension of PLM, and it's very inspiring to be at the leading edge of that journey, and it's also great to do that together with you, Steve, and PTC Product Management.
It's been fun. I guess we can open up for questions now.
Yeah, I mean,
in the very few minutes we have left, I guess we ran a little bit over, but we can stick around a couple minutes.
Please go ahead and ask your questions here, and I will see if I could pick a few here. I had one question regarding, I mean, will PLM replace LCA software?
Rafał, you want me to take a quick shot at that, and maybe you can elaborate?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is no. I mean, I think they're very complementary, right? I mean, PLM is going to continue to be that source of rich bill of material and product information, whereas and will flow into these LCA tools to do those more in-depth analyses and calculations to really understand the breadth of the environmental impact. But what I think is really important here is that it shouldn't be just unidirectional, right? It's important that rich LCA information gets fed back into PLM, because then it's able to inform you around future choices and future decisions that you make. So I think they're more complementary than one replaces the other. I don't know what you think about on that one, Rafał, but maybe you have some thoughts too.
Absolutely. Two perspectives of that is that PLM can streamline lifecycle inventory. That will be very beneficial and help LCA consultants with their work. And what you said, Steve, is absolutely aligned with what I think, to be able to enable design for sustainability. When engineers make choices based on emissions, we need to have that information back. So that's what we are working on together. And it's, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I had another question here as well. What are the differences of the material data when using ANSYS Granta versus Echo Invent?
Rafał, I don't have do you have some insights into Echo Invent? I'm not as familiar with them. I imagine they have, there's probably some similarities. I think, I'm guessing that ANSYS maybe goes to a little bit more depth around the from an analysis perspective, because that sort of feeds into a lot of the tools in their ecosystem. Maybe you could comment on that.
Absolutely. Echo Invent has ANSYS Granta has much a bigger list of materials, including also alloys, and including the footprint values that are analyzed material by material, and they are coming from Echo Invent as well, but also are verified against additional environmental sources, because Echo Invent is the most popular environmental source, but it's not the only one. So that's the difference. And when we speak about the business case, you will most likely be selecting between particular alloy of steel or aluminum, rather than doing a big change from steel to aluminum. That's going to be a little bit that way, in my opinion. So it's much better precision. And I think it's also all about the material variability. So it depends on your particular case. If you have it's a very long topic. Feel free to get in touch with Steve or myself on that topics offline.
But you made a good point. You made a good point, Rafał. I mean, again, we're not here to tell you one's better than the other, but it is in working with the folks at Ansys, it's pretty clear that they are. I've said that their heritage is in that analysis realm, but they're clearly recognizing the need to complement that with additional environmental or sustainability information as well.
Right, exactly. They are material
Yeah.
they are material
point.
specialists.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I would pick one last question here, and that is regarding, how open or ready do you think that, manufacturing companies are in general by investing in sustainability solutions?
Well, I wasn't privy to it, Rafael. I know you joined PTC in its tour around Europe this past summer, and it was a pretty popular topic, I understand, with many of our customers that they're recognizing that in order to meet these needs, they're gonna have to better leverage what their utilization of PLM and their life cycle processes to help reach those sustainability goals. Because again, we were focused on Europe. They know that if they're of a certain size, they need to meet these targets, and they're looking for as much help as they can get, and they're seeing the value that having a strong, robust bill of material and having it life cycle managed in a single repository is really going to allow them to scale. That's the concern. I can do this once, but I'm going to have to do this over and over and over again. It has to be repeatable. And in order to do that, you have to have a reliable system that you can reference to make that happen. That's the feedback that I've heard. Rafael, you were there in person for some of that, so maybe you have some comments.
Absolutely. I think that the first comment I have here is that LCA at the moment is pretty manual. And by manual, it requires 100% consulting to perform the LCA on your every physical product. Now, we have around 30,000 LCA consultants on the planet, and it's estimated that the CSRD regulation will broaden the scope of companies at least 5 times. So there's going to be millions of products to LCA. So customers are realizing that at some point, the way they continue will be very expensive. Some customers realize that they need to do it because they haven't done it yet. So in my opinion, most of the manufacturing companies are looking into that area because in some cases, the penalties coming from not being compliant with CSRD are very high. In some countries, like in France, you can even go to jail if you don't comply, if you don't submit the CSRD report, which is interesting. There was an article this January. And then, in my opinion, CSRD starts 2025. It's, in my opinion, most of the manufacturing companies, but based on what my discussions are looking at this, it's just a question of when. So yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah. Thanks. And time is unfortunately running out. Yeah. It's going quick here. So many thanks, everyone for joining. And you have the contact details, to Steve and Rafael. So further questions that you might have, we'll show the next one here. So with that, I hope to see you back to the next PTC Talks on the 4th of October at the same time for a session about Beyond Link and Trace, Mastering Windchill and Codebeamer Integration for Holistic Product Lifecycle Management by Manan Arora and Jürgen Glaser at Aurora Technologies. So with that, have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and enjoy everything, until the next PTC Talks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.